Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the darkest stories lurking beneath the surface. Today, we dive into the shocking tale of a TikTok mom whose obsession with prison love spiraled into a nightmare. Emily Thompson had always wanted to be famous. Growing up in a small town, she dreamed of being someone people admired, someone whose life seemed effortless and exciting. When she became a mother at 19, those dreams took a backseat to the realities of raising two daughters on her own. But when TikTok exploded in popularity, she saw a second chance. She started making videos about her life, sharing everything from chaotic mornings with her kids to her struggles with loneliness and self-care. Her handle, Mom Life Unfiltered, took off quickly, drawing in thousands of followers who found her relatable and entertaining. At first, her content was harmless, funny stories about motherhood, the occasional rant about single parenting, and the ups and downs of trying to date while raising two kids. But as the numbers grew, so did the pressure to keep people watching. Likes and comments became more than just digital validation. They felt like proof that she mattered. She needed to keep them engaged, and ordinary mom content wasn't enough anymore. She started adding more dramatic elements to her videos, exaggerating struggles, creating emotional confessionals about her loneliness, and sometimes even manufacturing conflict to get sympathy. Late at night, when the kids were asleep, she scrolled through her feed, watching other influencers with envy. Some women built entire platforms around their relationships, their love stories getting millions of views. That was when she discovered a niche community of women writing letters to prisoners, men serving long sentences who they believed had been wrongfully convicted or had reformed behind bars. These women weren't just pen pals. They were finding love in the darkest places, standing by men society had thrown away. Their stories had intrigue, passion, danger, all the things Emily's life lacked. Curiosity turned into fascination. One night, she signed up for a prison pen pal website, scrolling through dozens of profiles. Some of the men were in for non-violent crimes, fraud, drug charges, theft. Others had committed violent offenses, robbery, assault, even murder. The more dangerous the crime, the more exciting it seemed. She knew she had no real interest in these men, but the idea of having a love story that people would obsess over, that would make her TikTok explode, was irresistible. At first, it was just messages, small talk with a few different inmates, testing the waters. Then she got a letter from Jason Reed. He was serving life without parole for a murder he swore he didn't commit. He was charming, poetic even, with a tragic backstory that made Emily's heart ache. He wrote about how he had been young and reckless, caught up with the wrong crowd, but had changed over the years. He said all the right things, how he admired her strength as a mother, how he wished he could be there to support her, how he wanted to be a positive influence in her daughters' lives. It wasn't long before Emily was posting about Jason on TikTok. At first, she hinted at having a special someone. Then she started sharing details how she had fallen for an inmate, how people judged her for it, how love didn't come in the way people expected. Her follower count surged. People flooded her comments with opinions, some cheering her on, others horrified. It didn't matter, she was getting attention, and for Emily that was all that mattered. Emily's obsession with Jason deepened quickly. Their letters turned into daily video calls, where he spoke to her with a softness she hadn't experienced in years. He made her feel special, like she was more than just a struggling single mother. He told her she was beautiful, that he wished he could be there to protect her, that he wanted to be a father figure to her daughters. Those words were intoxicating. The more attached she became, the more she shared about him on TikTok. She called him her soulmate, the man who truly understood her in ways no one else did. She painted their relationship as a story of redemption, a misunderstood man behind bars and the woman brave enough to love him. Her audience was divided. Some people romanticized the relationship, praising Emily for her loyalty and saying everyone deserved a second chance. Others called her reckless, irresponsible, and selfish for bringing a convicted murderer into her daughters' lives. Emily didn't care about the criticism. If anything, it made her even more determined to prove people wrong. She started dressing up for her video calls with Jason, applying makeup and styling her hair as if she were going on a real date. She recorded herself getting ready, explaining to her followers how love wasn't limited by walls or distance. She posted clips of Jason's letters, his voice messages, and even snippets of their calls, making sure to highlight the moments where he spoke tenderly about her daughters. Then came the moment that changed everything. During one of their calls, Jason asked if he could talk to the girls directly. He told Emily he wanted them to feel comfortable with him, to see him as someone who would always be there for them. Emily hesitated for only a second before calling them over. Her youngest, Ava, was just 6 years old, too young to fully understand. Her older daughter, Lily, was 10 and had already grown wary of the way her mother's life revolved around a man she had never met. When Jason smiled at them through the screen and said, "Hey, girls, you can call me Daddy if you want," Emily beamed. She thought it was sweet, a sign that their blended family was forming even before Jason got out. Ava giggled, always eager to please her mother, and repeated, "Hi, Daddy Lily," however, stood frozen, her face unreadable. After a moment, she mumbled a hello and left the room. Emily brushed it off as shyness and didn't think twice about it. What mattered was that her followers were eating it up. She posted the clip online, captioning it, "When your kids finally accept your soulmate." The video exploded. Some people called it heartwarming, but most were horrified. The comments flooded in, people saying she was brainwashing her children, putting them in danger, making a mockery of motherhood. News articles picked up the story, questioning whether she was mentally stable. But Emily refused to back down. She doubled down instead, making more content about how the world judged women like her, how society didn't believe in second chances. She encouraged her followers to write to prisoners, to open their hearts to love. She had found purpose in this, a mission. What she didn't realize was that her mission was about to spiral completely out of control. Emily's world had transformed. What started as an unconventional romance had become a full-blown movement in her mind. She wasn't just a woman in love with a prisoner, she was an advocate, a voice for the misunderstood. Every day she posted updates about Jason, pushing the narrative that he was a changed man who deserved freedom. She encouraged her followers to write letters of support, sign petitions, and donate to a legal fund she had set up, claiming the money would help get Jason the appeal he deserved. But her content was no longer just about Jason. The high she got from attention made her crave more, and soon she was writing to multiple inmates at once, forming connections with other men behind bars. Each one had a story, a claim of wrongful conviction, a childhood of hardship, a promise of redemption. She loved the feeling of being needed, of being the one person these men could rely on. It made her feel powerful. Her daughters, however, were not adapting to this new life the way she had hoped. Lily, now growing more aware of the situation, had become withdrawn and resentful. She hated the way their home had turned into a shrine for men they had never met. She hated how her mother's priorities had shifted, how every conversation seemed to revolve around prison reform or the latest letter from an inmate. But most of all, she hated that their mother kept forcing them to call these strangers Daddy. Emily didn't see Lily's discomfort as a red flag. Instead, she saw it as defiance. She scolded her for being rude, for not understanding what real love looked like. Ava, still too young to grasp what was happening, continued playing along, repeating whatever made her mother happy, but Lily had started pushing back, refusing to join in on video calls, ignoring Emily when she gushed about the latest letter, rolling her eyes whenever a new daddy was introduced. Then the fights started. Not just online, where Emily battled trolls and critics, but in real life. Parents at Ava's school had started whispering. Lily's teacher had called with concerns about her behavior. Strangers were messaging her, calling her an unfit mother, some even threatening to report her to Child Protective Services. Emily's response was to go even harder. She made videos ranting about the haters, about how people were trying to tear her family apart. She framed herself as a victim, a mother just trying to love and be loved. But behind the scenes, things were unraveling. She had sent thousands of dollars to Jason and the other inmates she had been corresponding with, draining her savings. When she struggled to pay her rent one month, she started a GoFundMe, claiming it was for legal fees, but she used most of it to cover her own bills. She told herself it was fine once Jason got out, they would build a life together. What she didn't realize was that Jason was not the man she thought he was. Neither were the others. They were using her, manipulating her for money, gifts, and attention, and soon Emily would be forced to face the truth in a way she never expected. The first real crack in Emily's fantasy appeared when a journalist from a popular true crime blog reached out to her. The message was polite but direct. They were writing a piece about prison relationships and had come across her TikTok. They wanted to know more about Jason's case. Emily was thrilled at first. This was exactly what she needed: media attention that would help spread Jason's story and bring more supporters to his cause. She agreed to an interview, confidently telling the journalist how Jason had been young and reckless but wasn't the monster the system painted him to be. She repeated the same point she had told her audience, how he had gotten mixed up with the wrong people, how the evidence against him was circumstantial, how he had spent years bettering himself. The journalist listened carefully, thanked her for her time, and promised to be in touch. 2 weeks later, the article dropped, and Emily's world started to fall apart. The journalist had done more than just listen to Emily's version of the story. They had dug into Jason's past, spoken to detectives, and uncovered details Emily had never bothered to research. The truth was far darker than she had believed. Jason wasn't some unlucky man caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. He had brutally murdered a woman during a robbery gone wrong, and his supposed reformation was nothing more than a manipulative act he had perfected over years of preying on lonely women. The article detailed how he had scammed multiple pen pals before, promising love and loyalty in exchange for money. Emily was just his latest victim. But the revelations didn't stop with Jason. The journalist had looked into the other inmates she had been corresponding with as well. It turned out that at least 2 of them had extensive histories of domestic violence, and one had even been caught threatening a previous girlfriend from behind bars. They weren't misunderstood men. They were dangerous criminals who had used Emily's desperation for attention to their advantage. The backlash was immediate. The TikTok comment section, which had once been filled with supporters and sympathizers, turned against her. She was flooded with messages calling her naive, reckless, and even complicit in promoting dangerous men. Some demanded she take accountability for introducing her daughters to criminals. Others called for Child Protective Services to get involved. At first, Emily tried to fight back. She went live on TikTok, tearfully defending herself, saying the media had twisted the truth, that Jason was still a good man. She blamed the justice system, the haters, and even the journalist for trying to ruin her family. But the more she tried to defend herself, the worse things got. Brands that had once sponsored her dropped her immediately. Her GoFundMe was reported for fraud and taken down. Followers who had once adored her were now demanding she be investigated. Then, the final blow came. One night, there was a knock at the door. It was Child Protective Services. Someone had reported concerns about her daughter's safety. Emily stood frozen as the social worker explained that they needed to assess the environment. And just like that, the life she had built around her online persona started to collapse, taking her daughters down with it. The moment the CPS worker stepped into her home, Emily knew she had lost control. What had started as an exciting, rebellious love story had spiraled into something she could no longer manage. The social worker asked questions about her daughters, how they felt about the men in her life, whether they felt safe, whether they understood the situation. Lily, always quiet but observant, refused to say much. Ava, too young to fully grasp the weight of what was happening, simply repeated what Emily had taught her to say, that Daddy Jason was nice, and that their mom loved him. But it wasn't just about Jason anymore. The investigator had seen the article, watched the TikTok clips, and read the thousands of comments from concerned viewers. People had submitted screenshots of Emily's posts, some of which made it seem as though she was prioritizing inmates over her own children. Then there was the money, the GoFundMe, the cash she had sent to prisoners, the unpaid bills piling up. The reality was inescapable. Her daughters were in an unstable environment, and now the authorities had stepped in to do something about it. Emily tried to argue, tried to explain that she was just misunderstood, that this was all a social media exaggeration. But the damage was done. Within a week, Ava and Lily were placed in the temporary custody of their grandparents. Emily was left alone in a house that suddenly felt too quiet. Without the chaos of online attention, without the constant back and forth between prisoners and followers, there was nothing left but silence. For the first time in months, she had to sit with the consequences of her choices. No cameras, no audience, just herself and the reality she had ignored. The men she had loved, the ones she had risked everything for, had all moved on. Jason stopped calling the moment the donations dried up. The others who had sworn they cared for her simply stopped writing. She had been nothing more than a source of money, a distraction for men who had nothing but time. The love she thought she had built was a lie. Her name was now infamous. TikTok accounts made entire videos dissecting her downfall. True crime YouTubers used her as a case study in manipulation and self-destruction. She became the face of a cautionary tale, a woman so desperate for love and validation that she had gambled her children's well-being for it. For weeks, Emily fell into a deep depression. She barely ate, barely got out of bed. But then one day she picked up her phone, instinctively going to TikTok. Her inbox was filled with messages, most of them cruel, but some from women who admitted they had once been in her shoes, women who had also fallen for prisoners, who had lost everything chasing a fantasy. For the first time, Emily saw herself through their eyes, not as a victim, but as a cautionary example of what obsession could do. It took months of therapy, legal battles, and self-reflection, but eventually Emily started to rebuild her life. She stepped away from social media, got a stable job, and focused entirely on proving she could be a responsible mother again. It wasn't easy. Trust was broken, and her daughters would always remember what she had put them through, but she was determined to fix what she had destroyed. Her story had been a viral spectacle, but in the end, the internet moved on. The comments slowed, the outrage faded, and Emily was left to deal with what truly mattered, rebuilding her family, one painful step at a time.